Sorry for waking you up. If you looked into the schedule and you saw the digital euro and were thinking, okay, why is something finance related at this big inclusion conference? It's because, of course, finances and technology that shape our way that money moves, that we access our finances, can be accessible, or it can, by design, be excluding. And the digital euro is being shaped by the European Central Bank as a social good, a public form of money designed to be available to everyone and to work for everyone, and especially for people with disabilities, across ages, and of course across circumstances. And to be at the forefront when things are designed, when they are thought through, and to have them being designed, especially having inclusion in mind, is very important. And especially financial inclusion is not just a side consideration, it is central. And when we think about digital currencies, it should be the thing that helps us to see that innovation can drive inclusion as well. So in this session, you will hear directly from the Austrian National Bank, the European Central Bank, and experts who bring lived experience into the discussion, grounding policy and technology in a real-world use. So let's take a look beyond technology and into trust, accessibility, and dignity, and to see how public money can continue to serve society and people with disabilities in a digital age. And with that, we welcome our session host.
Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for an exciting part of today's agenda. So to introduce myself very briefly, so Gemma Waters, I've led financial and digital inclusion work at Lloyds Banking Group and are now at the Connection Project, which I'll talk about in due course. As we come to the various sections of the panel, I'll ask everyone just to introduce themselves with their name and where they are working. And I'm sure, as you'll see, we've got a fantastic panel with a huge amount of passion, understanding and expertise for this topic. So Europe obviously already shares a common currency, the euro. So it's fair to ask the question, if we already have the euro, do we need a digital euro at all? So part of the answer really is in the growing expectation of citizens, people across Europe and beyond, to participate in an ever more digital society and economy. The way that we pay has changed faster than the public money that we all rely on. So increasingly, everyday payments, whether that's online, in shops, they run through private platforms, they run through private infrastructures. And whilst that's brilliant for convenience and innovation, it can also create risk. It can create dependency and a potential loss of resilience. So the digital euro is being explored as a way to ensure that in a digital economy, Europeans continue to have access to a public form of money that works anywhere in the euro area. But clearly, as we've just heard as well, today's conversation is not just about technical infrastructure and the way that money services and systems work. Fundamentally, this is about people. And this conversation has a backdrop in the kind of practical, citizen-centred work that many of us are engaged with here in the room today. In the UK, a new cross-sector alliance, the Connection Project, are starting to think about how do our essential services, so telecoms, banking, broadband, broadcasting, etc., all work together to think beyond making assumptions about things being digital by default. Our ambition is built around a simple idea. When banking, connectivity, and other everyday services don't work well for people, demand doesn't disappear rather, it shifts onto people, onto carers, charities, and frontline staff. So how can we all work together to think about practical support, digital systems that are truly inclusively designed? And that experience is directly relevant to the conversation about the digital euro, because if Europe introduces a new public digital payment focus, inclusion can't be a side consideration. It needs to be baked in at its very core. And that's part of what we're going to explore in the discussion today. We're going to understand why the digital euro is being considered and what it is. We're going to share best practices, understand what's working well in different markets, understand the roles of banks in fostering inclusion, accessibility and trust. And we're also going to think about the systemic barriers that prevent people from engaging with money digitally today. And hopefully we will keep this very practical and action orientated. So to begin, I'd like to invite Evelyn Whitlock, Programme Director of the Digital Euro Project at the European Central Bank, to make some opening remarks.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I've prepared 2 sets of slides. So the first part are mainly to introduce the digital euro as a concept. And then the second part is more on how we do the inclusiveness in the design from the start. So bear with me if you think, why is this not touching on inclusiveness? It will come, but in the second part, in order to go there, I think it's good to have a common understanding what indeed the digital euro is or would be. So if we would go to the next slide, which I don't think I managed, but anyway, so what I will focus on is the question, what is it, why would we need it, and how would it work? And a very short answer to that, it's a digital form of cash. So in the next slides, I hope I can further explore this and tell you how this would look like. I can't get it. Yeah, okay. Now I have gone too far. So the Digital Euro project is a project not of the European Central Bank. But it's really a development that we are doing together, the European Central Bank, supported by all the national central banks, but also really with a firm European background. So the European Commission has been drafting a draft legislation. The Parliament as well as the Council are discussing how to do that. The slide that I skipped is a quote from Valdis Dombrovskis, who is one of the Euro commissioners, saying that if you look to what is happening, the whole society is going digital. So we should also make sure that cash that has served us well for years is also well, evolving and becoming digital. On top, so I want to say that the digital euro is there to be there next to cash and not replacing cash. So here you see a quote from Piero Cipollone, who is the board member within the ECB, who is responsible for the digital euro. And in very short, he says, the digital euro will ensure that all Europeans can pay at all times with a free, universally accepted digital means of payment. And then again, quoting that you can think about it as digital cash. So how would that look like more concrete? Well, this was the one that I indeed wanted to say, but I have already done this. So here you see that although we still love cash, if we ask people, they want us to have cash around, have the availability to pay with cash. But we also see that there's a declining usage of cash for payments in shops, and then I'm not even talking about the growing importance of e-commerce payments, which is roughly 30% of the payments that we are currently doing. So the digital euro is this digital form of cash. Complementing cash, as I said, it's providing a freedom of choice. So nobody will be obliged to use a digital euro. It's an extra choice that people can have, and it secures that people have access to public money. If we would not do that, then it will be as it is today, that all digital means of payments are provided by commercial players. So next to that, which is something that we think is good, which was said already, it fosters innovation, it fosters competitiveness. It's also good that we make sure that there's a public means of payment that is also ensuring inclusiveness. But apart from inclusiveness, it is seen as very important and vital for us that there is a digital euro, because if we currently look to how we pay in Europe, the majority, we have a very fragmented landscape. So the European solutions are normally rather domestic and quite often very specific use cases, so only in the shop or only online. And the moment you travel across borders, you can no longer use them. And the payment solutions that come closest to you allowing to travel and to pay with the same means of payment are non-European solutions. And in the current environment, we believe that it's very important for our autonomy and resilience to make sure that we have European means of payment that have true European reach. And therefore, it's very urgent, like it is, to preserve autonomy in defense and energy. So with the digital euro, we can make this fragmented market structure more unified, because apart from the price tag, which I will not go too deep into this one, we need to make sure that you can, as we can for cash, if you travel borders, you just pay with the same means of payment. And I can imagine if you have a disability, it will also make your life easy, because you can always pay in the same way, independent of in which country you are. And with the digital euro, we really have the power to unify the payments market. So, what does it mean? It is something that is there for all occasions and for everyone. You see, one important thing here is that there will be an online digital euro. An online digital euro would look a bit like the current card payments, for example, that you know, that you can use both in store or on e-commerce. And then there will also be an offline digital euro. And an offline digital euro is closest to cash. It is digital euros that you will hold on your phone or a specific card. And you can pay between people or between you and a shop without going onto a network. So it also adds very much to resilience and has a high level of privacy, as cash also has. So, in short, what is the digital euro? In our view, it's the next step in the advancements of our currency. It's future-proof and it's inclusive. I will, as I said before, I will deep dive later on how we do this. It's always there, it's reliable, and it's your money in your hands. So we're very encouraged that if we ask around, that 66% of the Europeans say, once they understood what a digital euro is, saying, oh, I would be very interested, it's there, and I would really want to try it. So it's something that is important for us, and it's also something that the end user, so the consumers and the merchant, value to have. I'll stop here, and then later on I will say a bit more on how we do inclusiveness. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. That was incredibly helpful context to the rest of this conversation, so thank you very much. So now I think we're going to dive straight into the task at hand, the questions. Financial inclusion and the digital euro, now that we've understood what the concept is. What's needed for the digital euro to ensure financial inclusion? Joseph, maybe we can start with yourself.
Hi, from my... Hi, does it work? It does work, yeah, okay. Hi. So my name is Joseph, I'm a board member of the Austrian Central Bank, and in recent years, the last 2 years, we have had a focus on how to make a digital euro inclusive. Well, usually we talk to banks, to payment service providers, to financial institutions about, I don't know, financial stability matters. But then we have expanded our scope here, and we have now new colleagues to talk to, like people who are sitting here in the audience. We've set up a working group of 35 NGOs in Austria to talk to them, and thanks a lot to the experts. They are here as well as some other colleagues from other national central banks. And what we've done there is we've tried to gather information as to what does a digital means of payment need in order to be inclusive. And we were told to do our presentations as practical as possible. So I brought 2 slides with me today, and if I can switch to the next one, that's the one you will probably know. I guess most of the people know the euro banknote. It's a 50 euro banknote, and the idea of the ECB 25 years ago was to create it in an inclusive way, the best way possible. And the euro banknotes, they have certain features which some of you may be very well aware of. Like, for instance, the large printing. So visually impaired people can better see the banknote. Or the different sizes. Every banknote has a different size. So by touch, you can already realize, is it a 20 euro banknote? Is it a 50 euro banknote? You have the high color contrasts, the embossed printing for blind people, and the tangible lines. So you can see that accessibility was kind of an inbuilt feature from the very start of it. So that is an example. That was 25 years ago. Nowadays, we are facing different challenges, but the principles behind that are still the same. Like the big idea being how to make means of payment inclusive. And so the challenge we face today is how to create an inclusive digital euro. And in the working group I just mentioned with the 35 NGOs in Austria, we've already had a lot of discussions, and it came out that there is a couple of features a digital euro has to have. We illustrate a few of them here, like one being on the bottom left, physical card. It shouldn't just only come as an app, because some people may not have the means to use an app, so it has to come as a physical card as well. Also, a very important feature is that it's not only available online, but also offline, and of course an accessible interface, that goes without saying. It has to be cost-free, same as cash, because the basic intention is that it is a digital twin of cash. So cash is for free, of course. Every transaction you do with cash is free. Same goes with the digital euro. And then also what seems to be a very important feature of a future means of payment is the in-person support. So that you have to have someone to talk to, be it via telephone, be it somewhere close to your home where you live.
I think that point around assisted digital is just so fundamental and key, and something hopefully we can touch on later in the panel. Carmen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carmen, and I'm representing here today ONCE, which is a Spanish organization that represents the rights of blind people and also persons with all sorts of disabilities. And I specifically work for the EU Affairs Technical Office, so we work with the European institutions to, they're very aware of this, of accessibility in the European Union, but sometimes they forget, so we're always there to remind them. And the digital euro has been no different in this specific case. So we've believed that the digital euro can be a very powerful tool for the inclusion of persons with disabilities, but we believe that it can be only if it's designed from the beginning as an accessible with multi-channel payment instruments for people with visual disabilities, cognitive disabilities. But we've been talking about this, Evelyn has mentioned it, but I think it's also very important to mention that it needs to be able to allow people to use it independently and not rely on other people. So when it comes to the European Commission proposal, it's actually regulated in recital 54, the terms of accessibility, and afterwards in, I think it's article 22, sorry. And it says that it should comply with the European Accessibility Act, specifically with Annex number 1. But since we wanted some specific examples of what that would look like, I would like to talk about interfaces, mentioned before as well. And they need to be able to work with standard assistive technologies such as Zoom or keyboard navigation or screen readers, voice control, high contrast, as we've mentioned before. But not only web interfaces, also non-web interfaces as well, such as cards or ATMs, need to be able to work with these standard assistive technologies as well. We also need, for example, touch targets that are big enough for persons that do not have stable hands, for example, as well. We also need audio output, for example, whenever we are paying for a blind person, in this case. If the audio gives you reassurance of what you're about to pay, that makes it easier for a blind person to use this in an independent way, which is very important, as I mentioned before. We also need to have multiple access channels, because not everybody wants to use a smartphone, maybe. And this does not only apply to persons with disabilities, and this is also considered in the European Commission proposal. This also works for elderly people, for example. So it is necessary, for example, to have tactile or audio-assisted ATMs that can be used independently by blind people or elderly people as well. We would also like to see interaction designs that are simple, especially for people with intellectual or cognitive or sensory disabilities. They can benefit from clear language and consistent layouts, which have like minimal steps to make it easier for them. So, for example, confirmation screens to make sure that what you're paying is exactly what you're paying, or optional audio confirmations as well before validating, so you can double check what you're paying. And finally, and I think this is very important when it comes to independent use of these services, it's support structures and training for people, because even with an accessible design, many people with disabilities will need at the beginning some sort of support and training to learn how to use the digital euro. And this, we believe, that should be delivered. This should not only be a burden of central banks, but I believe that NGOs and disability organizations can also help with these trainings to help people be able to learn how to use it. And those trainings should focus on building autonomy, which is the ultimate way to allow persons with disabilities to use the digital euro independently.
Yeah, completely agree. That point around how do we give people agency, independence is so fundamental, and it's recognizing that actually that support and training is so helpful to anyone engaging with what will be a new service and a new proposition. I think it's also interesting considering as well financial literacy and financial capability too, as kind of a golden thread that no matter who you are, your age, your stage, your circumstances, it's going to be a real unlock for this as well. And the ecosystem point too, completely agree. Private, public, third sector all working together. Evelyn, your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I think a lot of things I can echo, and it also is logic because we work closely together. So we work closely together with all the national central banks, who all have people that are, like the Austrian Central Bank, are looking into making sure that the digital euro is inclusive. But we do that also with the NGOs, and so we're very well aware, and we're working closely together on that. I have a couple of slides. One thing I want to say, and it was a bit mentioned already, is if we talk about inclusion, we say always it's about financial digital inclusion. So it's indeed not only about people with a disability, but it could also be people that just find it difficult to get into the digital world. So it's, or even in the financial digital world. So it's really the broadest scope that you could think of, and we'll try to be as inclusive as possible within that. So maybe where do we stand? So we have done an investigation phase and a preparation phase. Through those phases, we have already said that digital financial inclusion is one of the key elements that needs to be in the design. So in the design, it's an intrinsic part of the design process. So not we have designed a product and then let's think about inclusivity. And we have not done that on ourselves. We have really looked for as much input as we can get from the people that would actually want to use it. So after these two phases, we are now in the current phase. And actually the current phase, we are moving a bit from what would the digital euro look like, how would the design look like, towards really advancing technical readiness. With that also deepening our market engagement. And since the legislative process is not finalized yet, we will keep supporting that. The aim is that we will have in the second half of 2027 a pilot. And then if the legislation would land in 2026, a first introduction in the whole of Europe could be foreseen on mid-2029. So that sounds very far away, but I can tell you, if you want to realize everything before that, that is quite a bit. But it also means, since the fact that we are advancing on the technical readiness, that now we will go into the more practical questions and looking to all the suggestions that, for example, were just mentioned. How can we really build that into the design? So this focuses a bit also on what we have done. So we have done, and we will continue to do a lot of user research. And these are a couple of the answers that we get back when we ask the funeral consumers on what they are looking for. So it's about security, it's about speed and ease of use, also efficient spending monitoring, sorry. And of course, wide acceptance. And I think that is one thing that the Digital Euro brings already from the start, with the fact that it's legal tender, at least that's how it's designed. You can trust that in every shop, be it a normal shop or an e-commerce shop, you can pay with the Digital Euro across Europe. So that would really allow you to have one payment method that you can use across Europe. And we will continue to do our work on checking what we are designing. So as said, in the preparation phase, we have more identified the objectives, and we have also identified the diverse user groups. I think what from earlier discussions, inclusiveness, that even digital financial inclusion gives you a wide spectrum of people who have different barriers actually to participate. So by segmenting them in different user groups, we can more focus on the obstacles that they experience and try to resolve them as much as possible. So here in the current phase, it focuses on the training parts, which was mentioned already. So how can we make sure that people indeed autonomously can use a Digital Euro, and how can we make sure that they learn how to use that? And of course, we need to also make sure that users understand what a Digital Euro is. One thing that I would like to say, so here you see the work streams that we have planned. So the one is on the ecosystem. So as you said already, it's not only about the card or the app, but it's really about the ATMs, it's about the terminals, it's also on where do people get support if they need it. We of course want to stay very close to the legislative debate to make sure that the legislation really support the digital inclusiveness in the design. We continue with the further consumer engagement on their needs, but very importantly also, we will further design the Digital Euro app. As Joseph already said, the Digital Euro will not only be an app, so there will also be a card, but there will also be an app on the phone. At the current legislation, there are two options, so people can either use the app from the banks, so the banks will integrate it into their own solutions. So we need to make sure that they have the right requirements. The legislation already puts quite a high bar there, but also we can make sure that they live up to that. But next to that, we are designing a Digital Euro app which will be provided by the Euro system. And there we actually committed to go up and beyond the requirements that already are in the legislation. And there, having testing panels, having input really very concretely on how the principles are implemented will be looked for. Very shortly, so we don't want to leave anyone behind, so it should be inclusive and accessible. And here you see a couple of the features, but I'm not going to repeat them because Joseph already very clearly explained them in his presentation. I would like to thank you. There are a lot of links here to materials that are accessible for you if you wish so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And I think the point that you were kind of closing on then, I really love the concept of the fact that you're thinking about all of these things in parallel. You're continuing to do kind of iterative, inclusive design and testing with lived experts. You're also doing the legislation and kind of regulatory elements, but then also not letting that stop the technical build, which is so crucial, getting something like this off the ground of the scale and the size that you want to. But I suppose it still kind of raises this question around how digital should the digital euro be? And you've all alluded to the fact there needs to be assisted digital, there needs to be offline mechanisms to support people too. It'd be brilliant to get some reflections from some of our experts here too, so Jakob and Yannick. So the reflections on the technology choices that need to be considered as part of implementing such a massive transformation. What needs to be true?
Yes, indeed. Hello. Is this microphone working? I think it's not. Hello? Oh, there we go. Welcome back. Hello, everybody. My name is Jakob. I am from Estonia. I lead an accessibility consultancy agency. And I very much agree with all the points already said on this stage. The fact that we need to have inclusion baked in from the start, we need to follow the standards, and we cannot go fully digital because one side of this is not everybody is using smartphones. The other side is that anything can happen, and internet can then go down, and the electricity can go away, and we still need money for that. And I try to look and think into sort of the nitty-gritty details of doing payments and receiving payments. And another thing we need, aside the inclusion and accessibility, is predictability. Because we need this to work at 3 a.m. in the best greasy kebab shop on the corner, and also when buying the cruise for your family and when you're declaring your taxes. So we need to have this work in very, very different situations and for a lot of different people. So, and this is a part, you know, no matter the technology, I think the way we communicate the whole change and the whole new technology to people is key. So one thing which we definitely need to pay attention to is communication. How do we tell the users how this all is going to work? What possibilities does the new system have? How we tell people who are running, for example, as a merchant, that you know this you can now collect payments in an accessible way, and what's it mean? Because there's nothing worse than standing at a counter and knowing that they have an accessible payment terminal, but but having somebody there who has no idea what the word accessibility means. So we need communication. We also need to look beyond the standards, and we need to look into specific scenarios. For example, I think if we have blind people here, you all know how tedious task it is to scan a QR code. It's very difficult if you're using a screen reader on your phone, because the phone tells you when it finds the QR code, but it doesn't tell you where it is. So it's like, you know, pointing your phone around, and then with good luck you find a QR code. And I would like to give a shout out to Microsoft, whose implementation of Seeing AI is fantastic. When you try to scan a barcode, it starts beeping very slowly when it detects even a tiny hint of a barcode on the edge. And the closer you get to it, it beeps faster. So it's sort of homing into that. I think that's one of the good examples on how to use this technology. We also need to, you know, have everything multimodal. So a sound notification telling you that your payment went through or it didn't went through, what went wrong, but also a haptic notification so you can feel it in your hand if you're blind, but you're in a nightclub and you cannot hear your phone speak to you. Or, as already mentioned, high contrast and easy to read details. And there's also one critical issue right now with payments. It's not happening online, but it's happening everywhere else. If you pay for something, most of the times, if you're visually impaired, you don't know how much you're paying after the payment. And I think this is a problem right now we can solve with a digital euro, whether we use a spoken announcement, something on your phone, something else. There are tons of possibilities to do that. So we need to think through the whole user journey, and we need to make sure that it is predictable. So we can make something new, and we will be making something new and something completely innovative. But once it is set in, we want this to be consistently working, and we want this to be similar, as I said, in the greasy kebab place and also in a fancy restaurant. Because what is the problem right now we are seeing? I'm working also with the European Blind Union on payment terminals accessibility. Everybody's building a different way of making the payment terminal accessible. And you can have 5 different terminals in one restaurant, so it's also a surprise every time you start paying. How is the accessibility this time? It is accessible, but how does it work? And I think it's important to think this through also with the digital euro. So those are a few thoughts. I will pass the mic over to Yannick now.
Hello, my name is Yannick. I run a small media company in Germany, and I also want to add some points regarding user terminals or receiving money from one part. So a lot of ATMs or terminals where you can pay with your card might be easy to use for most people, but for people with disabilities, for if they can't move or their arms are not wide enough, so oftentimes those terminals are not clearly, not easily accessible through just moving there. So every terminal, every ATM should also be maybe be part of the user journey and also looked at through a lot of people, through a lot of different perspectives, and need to be assessed and also keep everyone involved in the journey. And I also think that the digital euro might also be a good opportunity to foster new innovations for people with disabilities, to also create new businesses, create new solutions on their problems everyone might have, but can also be used for all kinds of peoples. And those kind of new payment methods might be and should be also be considered to grow innovation, grow businesses, not only for everyday people, but for everyone, every kind of disabilities. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. And there's so many, just, between what you've both said there as well, the number of use cases, as you said, I mean, it's just endless reasons why that consistency and that clarity is just going to be so key. So we're kind of marching towards the end of this panel, which feels like it's gone incredibly quickly from my perspective, given the amount of expertise and how massive this topic is. But a question to the broader panel, if I may, and do chip in. If the digital euro is to be a genuine public good and deliver what we want it to for financial inclusion and social inclusion beyond, what design and governance choices do we need to make now in order to make sure that it delivers against that in practice in the future, not just in principle?
If I may, but maybe let me also just say thank you to all the practical examples. That's exactly the input we sought when we started our working group, and it's also like audio output, of course. That should have been on our slides, right? So thanks a lot for that, and we are on our way to gather more input with a survey we are conducting, the only restriction being that it's only Austrian companies and Austrian NGOs that can participate, but I would invite everyone to come up later on to participate in that. But then, coming back to your question, I guess from what we've learned in that working group, the key feature, of course, is accessibility and availability. So there has to be a legal mandate, as Evelyn put it, it has to be accepted everywhere in Europe, and people have to have trust in that. And the other thing is usability, of course, and we've all heard all these examples of what features a digital euro has to have in order to have a good customer journey, if you want to. And maybe a last point also, and it has been mentioned already, financial literacy. Well, as a central bank, we have lots of initiatives with financial literacy, and it always comes back to, and regardless of which difficulties you may face, or whether you're old or young, there's always a tendency of a hesitance to use digital means at all. some sort of resistance because you're not sure whether it could be fraud, and that's something I think we have to mull over a bit and try to increase that financial literacy level from the outset.
I mean, we definitely haven't got that right in the UK, but all of those points that you've just said are things that a similar UK-based coalition are trying to face into, because digital can also act as a bit of a Pandora's box. The more that you do it, the more there's more and more potential risk. But actually, it's just about making sure there's the right standards and the right experience in the first instance. And then, as you say, what's the kind of literacy program, and making sure that it isn't just financial services that are delivering that, but also utilities firms, community organisations. I think Carmen's point earlier is a really valid one about the entire ecosystem. Actually, if there's a clear direction and vision, and we're kind of working towards it together and each playing our role at the right point.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to jump in talking about what it needs to be done and what can we do now, and I think the ECB is going to agree with me on this one. And I'm taking it a little bit to my arena, but we need the European Parliament to finish their work on the ECB, because this law was presented by the European Commission in 2023, and of course there has been some work undergoing these past 3 years. But the European Parliament is the one that's I don't want to say lagging behind, because that's not exactly it, but they had a rapporteur, and then he stepped down, and then now we have another one, and he's actually Spanish. So the Econ Committee is still working on the report. It got, I think, 1,500 amendments or something like that. They're working on the compromise amendments, and they need to vote on it. Expected in May of this year for the plenary, but the vote on that, it's not the finish line for this law that's going to actually establish the digital euro, even though the ECB has the final say on this. But like after that vote in plenary, there needs to be trilogues between the Parliament and the Council, which represents the member states, and then the European Commission. So this takes time. So I think one of the main things that we need to do is get the Parliament to finish this report, to be able to pass it in plenary, and then go to these negotiations to be able to keep working on this and make the digital euro a reality.
Brilliant, thank you. Jakob.
Yeah, I think the one of the key things we need to lock in from the in the whole project is that accessibility is absolutely non-negotiable in any phase of the project, because I have seen many projects, and I'm not doubting that this is the case here, but I've seen so many projects where we start with accessibility and we think we know it all, and once it's released, there is a single small or few little details which weren't considered because accessibility experts weren't on board, or they're in the testing phases, people with disabilities or other needs weren't included. So I think it has to be accessibility here shouldn't be as a side sort of mention that we are going to do digital euro, which is amazing in all kinds of ways, and it's also accessible. But we are going to do a accessible digital euro. And I think this mindset, if it's included in the project in all stages, would change, because I talked about lots of digital interfaces, but accessibility also has to spread into, let's say, cards or whatever tokens we will be using. How do I know this is my digital euro card, or this is my digital business euro card? As a blind person, is it easy to grip? Is it slippery? Is it easy to find in a wallet, etc.? There are so many questions, and it's the best if we all are on board and work with this. And it also may open up new avenues, because if you create things in an accessible way, including different use cases, different needs, it opens up the possibility for innovation. So many times I've seen this, where we propose an accessibility feature and people who do not have direct accessibility needs perk up and say, like, wow, I could use this. So I think that's also the beauty of having accessibility from the ground up in the project.
Brilliant, thank you. Any other commentary? Otherwise, I might open it up to the audience, if I may. Are there any? I suppose we've got representatives from so many different markets and countries. What would need to be true for you to use a digital euro? I think we've got a lady in the front.
Yeah, I actually have a question. My name is Bianca Prince. I used to work at ING Bank. I used to be the head of accessibility there. And I'm currently running my own consultancy, see if it works. What I notice about the discussion you guys are having is actually work, which to be honest, I already worked on a few years ago. And there are solutions. There is the card with a notch. For example, ING has standardized that. That makes it easier to recognize. We have been working on blind faith, which is payment via your mobile, so you know the amount in advance. And actually the information from the POS terminal is available in your banking app. I'm quite curious because if I hear you talk, I don't hear you talk about these solutions which are there and actually ready for use. So I'm quite surprised by that. Is that my part?
No, thank you for asking the question. So what we are currently at the stage to define what would be needed. So actually, indeed, on the panel, you more hear like we need to pay attention to A, B, C, D, which I think is where you need to start. And that's actually what I tried to say in my presentation is that we are now moving to the phase where we need to design that. And for so how do you do that? So if this is the requirement, how would you really do that? And there are a lot of solutions. The beauty of the digital euro is that since the digital euro is legal tender like cash, it would be available for everybody. So independent on which bank you use, independent on which country you live, all of these solutions would be combined in the digital euro. So let's take your example. So this is very good for the clients of ING, but if you're with another bank, you have no access to these kind of things. So the beauty of the digital euro is that we could incorporate this for everybody across Europe. And for sure, we're going to look into the solutions that are there and build on them. We don't need to reinvent the wheel where it's already invented. But the beauty of the digital euro is that we can really bring it together in one place.
Thank you. No, I was just... I suppose, though, to the lady in the audience's point, it sounds like in Austria, for example, there's a kind of mechanism through which some of these fantastic examples and solutions that already exist can kind of come upwards and be plugged in. Do similar things exist in the other different countries?
I think it is quite scattered, as Evelyn has put it. For instance, with ING, which sounds like a perfect example, I don't think that ING would have that in Austria, even though they have a branch here. Whereas there's other banks who would already have very innovative, inclusive options for payment. So I think it is very scattered. And well, I can only repeat what Evelyn has just said. The beauty of the digital euro would be that all these solutions would be available all over Europe in a kind of a single market.
Can I add maybe one thing to your question, which was, I think, also deep diving on what is the Austrian central bank doing and what is happening in all the other countries. So each country has a slightly different way to approach the market. They have different platforms where they already talk about financial inclusion and stuff like that. So the mechanism, as Joseph said, in Austria there is a survey, but that is slightly different. But we have set up in the euro system, so with the ECB, a working group with all the representatives of all the central banks. So all the ideas that come up in Austria will come to the design of the digital euro, but also the one from Germany and the one from Ireland and the one from Slovenia. So the way they collect it might be different, but it will come together in one platform.
Okay. I do think that the issue is not that there are no solutions. I think we have plenty of solutions and very, very good solutions. And I think now the hardest job is to pick which is the best one and put all the good solutions together in this specific scenario. And we in Estonia also, we are seeing our bank cards already getting the notches, which are like little tactile cutouts on the edge of the card, so you can detect which card is which. Hopefully we will be getting our talking payment terminals at some point soon. The question is, you know, if I travel outside the borders of Estonia, will those things work differently or the same? If they work, do the solutions work the same in Austria over here, or in Germany, wherever? So I think that's also a important question.
It's the interoperability point, which
exactly,
is
universal
looking to
sort of
address.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, brilliant. Lovely. I think we've probably got time for one more question.
I have a question about the accessibility for people with learning difficulties and learning disabilities. How the digital euro, or how it can be assured that for people with learning difficulties and learning disabilities, the accessibility is ensured, and maybe how it can increase also the level of financial literacy of those peoples.
Brilliant question.
Thank you for the question. As I said indeed earlier, we see different, the group of vulnerable people with disabilities is rather big. So that's also why we have segmented them in different groups, because of course the challenges that somebody has who is visibly impaired is different than somebody with learning disability. So we really want to look to the different groups and then identify what are the things that could help. As said, we are currently moving from, okay, what are the requirements to how are we really going to do that? But important things that we have on the radar are already the learning programs, but also that there would be assistance in each member state, which should be rather widespread through the countries to really help people, but also in the design of the app, for example, to make it really easy to understand. And I think Carmen gave a couple of examples how we could do that. So it's on the radar, it's important for us, and we will continue to work on that.
Lovely. Well, we're at time, unfortunately, but thank you to my fantastic panelists for all of their expertise and enthusiasm and passion. Oh, one remark. No, I just wanted to one closing remark from my side, and I speak on behalf of all the national central banks that are here. We everywhere do a active reach out to the markets and to make sure that we talk with everybody that wants to contribute to this in the design and also in the implementation. If you feel that you have something to say and you feel not heard or we have not reached you, feel free to reach out to us so that we can address that. And then indeed one last thing I want to say is that we would like to continue to cooperate with you in the design and the practical implementation, taking all these things that have been said into consideration. But as Carmen also said, the legislative process is important to conclude as well. And where it's important that it concludes, but also that the points that are important for digital financial inclusions are maintained, so that it's that each member states have the obligation to offer this assisted support, that there should be provided a card, that this is an obligation. One thing, all these things are currently still in the council view, so this is very good. One thing that is not captured by the council, which we hoped for, was that also the banks would have the obligation to always connect to the digital euro app, which we could design, as I just explained, as
going up and above the standards. That is currently not in the proposal of the council, which is, I think, a pity. So if you have any talk to anybody, maybe you want to mention it. I will close here. Thank you very much.
Not at all. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.